When we get to a place where we start trusting shame more than we start trusting the truth in our lives, more than we are trusting ourselves, more than we are trusting other people, that's when it becomes really dangerous. And so we need to reframe and ask ourselves, why am I allowing shame to override everything else?
Welcome back to Happiness in Progress. I'm your host, Danielle Craig. I'm an Emmy Award-winning journalist, a mom, wife, and you know what I like to say, just a person looking for more joy in the everyday. This podcast is brought to you by the Mail Tribune. You can find more podcasts at mailtribune.com. If you haven't already, go check out the Hip Habits Workbook. It is a workbook of 6 months of weekly habits that will help you focus on different parts of your life, everything from financial to physical to spiritual goals. I am so excited to introduce you to today's guest. You are going to be hearing from Ashley Lemieux. She is the founder and CEO of The Shine Project and the author of Born to Shine and the brand new book out today, I Am Here, The Journey from Fear to Freedom. Her company, The Shine Project, is an online community for women that helps them find support, resources, motivation, and encouragement to triumph over the challenges in their lives. She talks a lot about her own challenges, including losing her 2 adopted children after raising them for 4 years, and experiencing the loss of her rainbow baby and almost losing her own life. In this episode, she's going to talk a little bit about those experiences, but we're going to focus on her new book, I Am Here. This book is so powerful. Some of the things we talk about today are how we can feel alone because of shame, how to break open the shame to learn that we're not alone. She's going to tell us about what it was like to have sepsis the very week that COVID shut everything down, so she was physically alone in the hospital. She's going to talk about the 5 questions she asks herself every day. These are so powerful. I am going to be adding them to my routine. And something she knows well, pain, and how she has learned that pain is not part of her identity or your identity. I really think you're going to love this episode and learn a lot and grow a lot. So let's get to it. Ashley, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Oh my gosh, Danielle, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk with you.
Your latest book, I Am Here, is so beautiful. After finishing it yesterday, I was just thinking, this good work that Ashley is putting out right now is going to change people's lives. I really believe that. So I love that you wrote this and it's just so beautiful. So the first thing, there's so much in the book I want to talk about, but the first thing I want to talk about is what I think a lot of my listeners are dealing with right now is that feeling of being alone. I know you were seeing this at live events before the pandemic. Now we're in a pandemic. We've been so for a year and we're feeling more alone than ever. Why do you think women so often get trapped in that feeling of being alone?
I think that there's a lot of reasons that we feel alone, but one of the biggest reasons I think we feel alone is shame. I think we start going through hard times in our lives and then we feel ashamed that it's happening to us. We feel sometimes like things are our fault, that we have no control over and that are not our fault at all. We feel really sad sometimes and we often internalize that. And because other people might not know what we're going through, we feel like we're the only ones. And I think that being in a place where you believe that you're the only one experiencing something creates the shame and aloneness that makes us all feel really disconnected from each other, when in reality, a lot of us are way more connected than we even realize if we were to know what other people were going through.
So this is, I think right away, this is going to be one of those steps you wrote about, reaching in, reaching out, and reaching up. That reaching out step, the moment you share something, I mean, I can't tell you how many conversations I've had where one of us opens up and then it's just like, it's the exhale. Tell me about that.
Yes. So when we're able to reach out and tell someone that we trust what we're going through, a lot of times when we disclose to someone, they might be disclosing something back to us as well. And it's the exhale of, oh, you too? Like, oh, someone else feels this way? Like, I'm not weird or crazy or abnormal. Like, you feel this way too. And so when we're able to reach out to others it creates this connection and this community where we no longer are alone. The hard thing is still happening. Like, it doesn't take that away. But when we can be in community, because I believe we were never meant to live life alone. And so when it can take away the feeling of aloneness, then we're able to start building a support system for ourselves where we can keep reaching out to others. And when we reach out to others for our own help, we then know what to do when other people reach out for us when they're seeking help. And so it creates this really beautiful transaction among all of us when we can all just continue to support each other.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I've seen it in action and it's beautiful. What does doing that do to shame?
My gosh, it makes shame go away. It makes shame, because if shame feeds off of loneliness and convincing you that you're the only one, and that's taken away, then shame gets taken away. And in replace of shame comes acceptance and power and ability to move forward through what it is that you're going through, because nothing stops us in our tracks like shame does. And so I think a lot of times when we are feeling alone and when we're going through a hard time, that if we can get past that first step of overcoming the shame, then we're able to start this journey from fear to freedom. But we have to walk through releasing the shame first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of the things you wrote about this, the reaching out, you wrote, quote, "We don't always know who to trust, who will understand, who will offer us the comfort and connection we so desperately desire. Sometimes the only way to learn where to lean is to let yourself fall. You may be surprised how quickly someone will lift you. You won't know, though, unless you're willing to reach that hand up and ask for help," end quote. How did you learn this? Because that's scary.
It's really scary. But I learned this the really hard way when I really didn't have any other options, because I didn't want to get out of bed anymore. We had lost 2 children during an unexpected contested adoption that we had raised for 4 years. And I did not want to continue living life anymore. And I knew that in order for me to get out of bed, I had to have help. I had to. And so that's when my free fall first started of, okay, who can I trust? Because that's something that's also really hard. When you go through hard things in your life and you feel like life or someone has betrayed you, it's very hard to know who to trust again. And so it's okay to feel that way. But there are also are safe, trustworthy people that are available. So for me, I needed professional help first. And I confided that into people who I knew only had my best interest in mind, like my husband, like my mom, like my sister. And so once I could start hearing what they had to say, because when we get to a place where we start trusting shame more than we start trusting the truth in our lives, more than we are trusting ourselves, more than we are trusting other people, that's when it becomes really dangerous. And so we need to reframe and ask ourselves, why am I allowing shame to override everything else? And so for me, part of letting that shame go was seeing what the people that I love had to say objectively about my situation so that I could have steps forward. And when they were there to catch me, I realized there's support for me. There's going to be forward movement for me. Healing is hard because it's not one big moment. It's consistent movement forward. But I'm setting up a support system, but the support system can only come if I'm reaching out for it and I'm allowing the help to come into my life.
I love what you said about us trusting shame. Saying it like this, in a conversation, that sounds just so crazy, but we all do it. We've all been in points in our lives where we've been trusting shame. So I want to go to the reaching in part of your reaching in, reaching out, and reaching up equation. What does that look like to reach in and start trusting ourselves more than shame?
At first, it looks really hard. At first, it feels really messy. And I want to make sure that's clear, because I think a lot of times when we commit ourselves to walking down a path of healing or finding help, we think that then everything suddenly gets easier. And then we feel like we might be doing something wrong when it's not easy right away. So I want to make it clear that at first it feels really messy to reach in. For me, reaching in looks like reminding myself who I am, reminding myself of the power inside of me through meditation, through affirmations, through being aware of good decisions that I'm making throughout the day. Sometimes in life, we stop trusting ourselves after we go through hard things. And so for me, I literally needed to start writing down a list of the good decisions that I was making so that I could remember that I can trust myself and that I can keep reaching in, because my intuition, my inner guide, is going to keep pressing me forward, making the next right step. So the more I could learn that I'm a person to be trusted with my own life, the more I felt confident in my decisions moving forward. So that's where I started.
I love that. And I love that aside you mentioned that this is hard. All of this is hard that we're talking about. This is messy work. It's not supposed to be easy. It's a journey, and we're learning, and it's not going to be perfect. Tell me about reaching up.
For me, reaching up is connecting with your higher power, whether that's God, whether that's the universe, whether that's spirit, whatever you believe that your higher power is. I believe that there is this very powerful connection that we are able to have the ability to access when we reach up. Sometimes that looks like prayer. Sometimes that looks like meditation. Sometimes that looks like worship, however it is that you worship. But being able to be reminded that there is a higher power that's helping lead and guide our lives that we can rely on, so that, again, we're reminded we're not doing this alone. That's become really important to me. I also want to say that for a long time, I was really mad at who I believed my higher power is. I was really mad at God. And for me, that was important. And I needed to give myself permission to be mad so that I could work through things. And so if you're in a place where reaching up right now feels really hard and you're really mad, it's okay. I think sometimes, again, that's where shame comes in, especially if we start having different feelings or thoughts that are different from how we grew up. But we don't need to have shame about that. And when you're ready again, I believe that reaching up can add a lot of power and clarity into the decisions that you're making in your life.
I think so many people can relate to that. How did you step out of that anger and be able to trust a higher power again?
At first, one of my friends told me something that really helped solidify my relationship with God. And that is, God can handle you being mad at him. Like, God's God, and he can handle you being mad. And so giving myself permission allowed me to reconcile that relationship in a way and in a time frame that felt supportive to me rather than just kept depleting me. I reached a point where I really needed clear answers again in my life, and I wanted them to come from a higher perspective. So I kept praying for peace. I know that peace is one of those feelings that nothing in the world can imitate. It's not a feeling that can be imitated. It comes from deep within, and it comes from above. And so for me, I kept saying, okay, I don't have all the answers onto how this is working with my higher power and what my steps look like forward, but I do know that I want to connect to peace. So I kept praying and asking, how can I connect to peace? Can you show me, can you give me peace today so that I know that I'm on the right path? And so again, as I started getting these little answers and as I started following my peace, it allowed my trust to grow. I also was in the darkest moments of my life, and I knew that there had to be a higher power looking out for me, because there was no way that I should have felt any light and peace in those moments unless there was someone bigger supporting me through them.
Wow. Wow, that's powerful. And that's not something you forget. So a year ago, right as the pandemic started, you were hospitalized with sepsis. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, it's wild because we really just hit the year anniversary of that. And my husband and I had just moved in to our new home. We had just moved back to Phoenix, where my family is. It really felt like this big step forward in our lives after going through a lot of pain. And I was also 16 weeks pregnant. And we were obviously we were so excited, but it just really felt like this fresh new movement forward. And one day after going on a walk with my mom and planning the baby's nursery, my body started hurting really bad. And within hours, I was in so much pain that the ambulance had to come and take me to the hospital. And when we got there, because it was the first week that the pandemic was shutting things down in Arizona, they told us that same day they made a rule that nobody can come with you past the emergency room. So I was wheeled away from my husband. And after test, I was told, first thing, baby was good, which we were so obviously just, okay, I'll go through anything, just keep my baby safe. That's all I care about. Keep him safe. But then I was told I had sepsis, and sepsis is literally an overtaking of infection in your blood that kills a third of the people who have it. It's a very dangerous situation. So immediately I'm put on antibiotics. I'm in so much pain, but they can't give me a lot of things because I'm also pregnant. And so how do they save me while also protecting the baby? And the next week in the hospital was actual hell. It was turmoil like I can't put into words because it was very dark. And there was this one moment where I stopped being able to breathe on my own, and my whole body went numb. And I opened my eyes to 12 doctors surrounding me. And there was this man who was taking monitor of my heart. And he said something that I believed saved my life in that moment, because I kept asking, am I going to die right now? Am I having a stroke? Am I going to die? And he looked at me and he said, nobody can do what you're doing right now. You are you, and you have the strength to pull yourself through this. And so I kept going through those words like, okay, no one else can do this for me. I can do this. And I have help. And after that moment, once I came to, I called in, the OB came in, and I called in for an ultrasound, because I said, I don't believe my baby and myself just survived what just happened. I don't know. I don't think that that's possible. And so a few hours later, they came and got me and sent me down to get an ultrasound. There was no more heartbeat on that ultrasound. And they still wouldn't let anyone come be with me. And so I sat just screaming. I was still in a lot of pain, but now I also knew that we lost our baby. And they told me that I had time to decide, how we would deliver. And the next morning, while I was alone in my hospital bed and behind a curtain in a wing of the hospital that I shouldn't have been in, my baby boy came really fast, and I delivered him by myself. And it was the most alone that I had ever felt in my entire life. And from there started this next healing journey for us, because I had felt so let down again by life and by God, that trusting anything after that has been really, really hard for me.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Ashley, I can't even imagine having to go through all of that, and then the COVID thing on top of it, with not being able to have your husband with you. What were some of the things going through your mind as all this was playing out?
As it was playing out, one of the things that I remember specifically going through my mind was my fear of dying. Mm-hmm. I genuinely thought that I was going to die multiple times, and I kept asking to have reassurance if that was going to happen or not. But I remember it because in that moment, even though life was so hard, even though we had just lost our baby boy, even though I did not know what the future was in that moment, I knew that my work on earth was not over. Mm-hmm. And I desperately wanted to stay here. Like I realized that the time that I had is something that could be taken at any moment, not in a scary way, but in a way where I wasn't ready to give that up yet. And I remember that moment because it became very important for me during the times where then again, it was hard to get out of bed. Again, when I didn't want to be participating in this life, it allowed me to go back and remember, even in my darkest moment on that bed, I was begging to continue to live because I knew that I wasn't finished yet. And so I've gone back to that place. It was also this really weird reality of what is happening, and you're trying to sort through things, and you have grief counselors coming in, and my family's knocking on the windows outside with signs saying that we love you and you're not alone, but you're also feeling really alone. But in my heart, there was just these moments, these really precious moments of, you can do this because you're the only one who can get yourself through this, and there's still a lot of life left for you to live.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what I want to ask is, what did you learn about life itself in those moments?
I learned that we're given really precious moments, and those moments don't last forever, and that it's okay that they don't. I think that a lot of times, at least in my life, we have these people or these memories that come in, and we want them to last forever, and it's okay that they do. But it's also okay to know that sometimes we're gifted with things for a moment, and then they're taken away. But the moments that they're taken away for, then we don't lose them. We just don't physically have them anymore, but they're part of us forever. But those moments of pain, they were never meant to destroy us. The moments of pain that we go through were never meant to make us stop moving forward. I think that pain allows us to reveal to ourselves the strength that we have, the determination that we have, the lessons that we need to continue to keep walking through life in a way that we stay aware of ourselves and the people around us. And I think that it's a gift for all of us that we are given these precious moments, no matter how long they last for. They're ours to carry with us forever. And it's not something that we ever lose.
I want to come back to the pain in just a minute, but first I want to acknowledge the loss of your rainbow baby, your sweet baby that you had been waiting for. It sounds like he taught you a lot. It sounds like he came here with very specific purpose, and he delivered that purpose.
Yeah, he did. When we were naming him, because we hadn't had a name yet. Well, we did, but it was not the name of Jace. Jace was not something that we had thought about. And when he came, very clearly in my mind, I felt that his name meant healer. And I was like, is there a name that means healer? And so I was looking up what names mean healer, and Jace just was there. I was like, oh my gosh, his name is Jace Michael after his dad. But from the moment he came, I was very aware of what his role was. Even though he didn't have as much time here as I have had, he fulfilled his purpose in bringing and helping me uncover so much healing that I would not have had without having the opportunity to be his mom. As painful as it has been, the healing that he brought with him is something that I would not trade for anything.
Mm-hmm. You know what's just so amazing about that too is, through that healing through you, you are spreading on the healing to more people. That healing is a domino effect as well. That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that story and being very vulnerable with that. I want to ask you about, we started out talking about being alone and emotionally alone and what that feels like. And you were physically alone in this situation. What were some of the things that helped you move through?
I had an angel nurse. So I really believed that the specific nurse I had was meant to be there at that time. Something about aloneness that I have learned is that sometimes we can feel alone because we physically are alone, and other times we can feel alone in a room full of hundreds of people. And so for me, I realized that my aloneness in the moment where I felt alone, because I physically could not be with people, but I was still connected to myself. I strongly felt the presence of my baby boy, strongly. And I believe I had these angel nurses to come take care of me, which then made me aware that I had a connection to my higher power, and God was taking care of me. So even in this moment where I was physically very alone, I felt alone a lot, but there were also moments where I felt so supported and less alone than I had felt other times in my life, that I learned that even when we are by ourselves, there's this power that we can tap into that can keep us continuously moving forward because we don't have to go through life by ourselves.
Wow. You weren't totally alone. The picture
Yeah.
maybe looked like you were, but you weren't at all. For someone who might be feeling alone right now, what do you think something is, and maybe they are that physically alone, um, what is something that they can do to try to tap into that feeling of not being alone?
That's such a good question. And I think one of the first steps that also is a hard step is being able to go inside of ourselves and get really honest about our situation and asking the question. I'm all about asking questions. I find my best answers and my best resolutions in life when I ask questions and allow myself to honestly answer those questions. So for me, I ask questions like, why do I feel alone? And as you get to the answer to that question, you can then ask the next question, which is, what do I need right now to feel less alone? And I believe that a lot of these answers, they're going to be different based off of who you are and what you're going through and what it is that you individually need, which is why when we can become vulnerable with ourselves about the reality of our current situation, we then can uncover the next steps. For me, the next step is always finding someone that you trust to share those feelings with so that they can support you and that together you can create a plan so that this feeling in your life doesn't have to last forever. And I want you to know that the feeling of being alone, it doesn't have to last forever, that there are ways and that there are solutions and that there is help so that you can feel supported and that you don't have to feel like you're going through life by yourself anymore.
Okay, I said we'd go back to pain. I want to go back to pain with a quote from your book. Oh, I love this. I love this so much. Okay, you wrote, quote, reclaiming your power isn't about eliminating pain. It's understanding that though pain may be part of your experience, it isn't a part of your identity, end quote. When did you realize this?
I realized that after we lost our first older two kids, and I was in so much pain, and I also didn't know who I was anymore because I was no longer physically a mom. That label was gone. So when you go from being an active mom 24 hours a day to not, this identity crisis that came to me at the age of 30 years old was unlike anything I had ever experienced before. I literally did not know who I was. So instead of knowing who I was, I then started thinking, well, my pain has now defined my life. My pain has now led me here, and this is it for me. I'm not a mom. I'm not doing good here. I'm falling short as a business owner. I'm being a terrible wife. So like all these labels that were once a part of who I was as my identity were now replaced by pain. So I started asking myself 5 questions every morning, which actually are in the book, that helped me uncover the truth about pain, which is truth was never meant to destroy us. And actually, it can be a really great teacher. Pain is not a part of pain is a part of who I am, but it is not me. Pain cannot be my identity because I am my identity, but pain can contribute in healthy ways to who I'm becoming. Once I realized that, and once I realized who I was outside of any labels, allowed me to have a different relationship with pain where I stopped running away from it and instead started learning from it.
Mm. Oh, how do you think having that understanding after going through that really incredibly painful experience of losing your first 2 children, how did understanding that pain was teaching you and not you, you are not pain, how has that helped you as you've gone through more painful experiences?
Well, it's helped me a lot because it's allowed me to have a lens of truth on my life during times where it feels really impossible to go through. Trauma and grief sometimes mess with how we are seeing things. And so when I can keep going back to the truth of, I might feel pain right now, I feel pain right now, but I am not pain. It allows me to keep those two things separate. And when I can keep those two things separate, I then can see a way forward, where maybe we're walking side by side by each other for a really long time, but it's not bearing me, it's not covering me up. And instead, actually, I'm able to be triumphant with it by my side because it's teaching me things and then allowing me to experience the world and people in a way that I otherwise would not have had the opportunity to experience.
Mm-hmm. You write in the book you write this list down of all the things that make you enough. You know, you're still a mom. You are a mom innately. So you're a good mom, you're a good wife. You write all these things down. And I loved reading this because I was having the same thoughts that you end up having. You get to a point where you say, no, I'm enough because I am. I am enough because I am. I loved that so much. We're running out of time. We won't go. We won't go into that. So instead, we'll go right into the questions. Tell me about the questions that you ask yourself every day.
So there's 5 questions, and these 5 questions came to me over the span of 6 months, and they help me find clarity and purpose in my day, which I believe are the 2 things that we need in order to make it through hard times, to land in a place where we feel free and fulfilled in our lives. The first question is, what is my intention today? And not in a woo-woo way of like, what's my intention today? And that word can be thrown out there. But what an intention is, it's a plan that keeps you on course. It allows you to know what to say yes to and what to say no to, so that you can move forward toward an end result. And so the intention can be really small. Like, my intention today is to connect with my spouse, or my intention today is to show up with love to everyone I'm meeting, even if I don't know them. But it just gives you a purpose. And then at the end of the day, you're able to feel a sense of accomplishment and pride and forward movement in that action. I then ask, who can I serve? Who can I serve today? And what's really amazing is when we become aware and willing to notice people who need our help, it's amazing the amount of people that we find who need our help. But we got to keep our eyes open to it first. The next thing that I ask is, why am I worthy? Why am I worthy to even seek after my attention? Why am I worthy to live this life? Why am I worthy to be here? Why am I worthy to find joy today? A lot of times, not feeling like we're enough and not feeling like we're worthy is what brings shame. And then we guilt ourselves into not moving forward and finding joy in our lives. So answering that question every day is really, really important. The next question that is also really important is, how can I show up as my truest self today? Who is my truest self? Not my best self. I used to ask who my best self was, but our best self is often, we often decide who that is based off of what other people want from us. But our truest self allows us to go into the world bravely, to fulfill our purpose, and to keep moving forward in a way that fulfills our lives. So going through these questions every single day has brought me a lot of strength and guidance. These questions have brought freedom into my life.
And did you say, what can I set down? That's one of my favorites.
Oh, and what can I set down? Oh, yes. Thank you.
We carry it all. We carry it all.
Like, did I forget? Yeah. So the other question was, the last question is, what can I set down? Like, what can I set down today? What have I been carrying with me? Is it a relationship that is really not serving me anymore? Is it a feeling of shame that's not serving me anymore? Is it guilt? Is it what has become really heavy that today I'm just going to set down so that I release myself from the chains of that feeling?
Mm-hmm. And you even mentioned the really mundane stuff of counting calories, paying bills.
Yeah.
I mean, some of that stuff is taking up too much space, and it's a good question to ask yourself, what's taking up too much space. I want to ask 2 more questions. This next one, you don't have to go into it too much. Just tell us which one of those questions has helped you most often, most consistently.
Who does the truest version of myself show up as today?
Amen.
Because we got to remember who we are in order to keep moving forward in our lives in a way that feels really good and clear to us.
Mm-hmm. Everyone needs to get the book to read that whole chapter. It's one of my favorites. I loved that. Okay. Last question I ask all my guests is, what is your one tip to feeling more joy in the good, the bad, and the in-between?
For me, joy comes from seeking peace. And so I try really hard to let go and stop carrying the things that don't bring me peace, and go really all in on the things that consistently, continuously bring me peace, because like I said earlier, I know that that feeling can't be imitated by anything else. And so if I'm seeking peace, I know that I'm seeking joy, because happiness can fade. We can be happy just trying to fill gaps in our lives that we don't want to sit with anymore. But with joy, I have found that peace leads to joy because it creates a lasting feeling that helps me focus on the right things.
Ashley, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your experience and your new book. When I finished it, literally my words were, "Well done, Ashley." Well done in my head.
That is so nice. You're one of the first people who have read it, because it comes out on May 4th. And so to hear that means so much to me. Thank you so much.
I hope you appreciated this episode. Of course, I am linking all of the information so you can go follow along with Ashley's journey, as well as get her brand new book. You can now get it today. So the link is in show notes for I Am Here. Thanks for being here on Happiness in Progress.